bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya.
Mahārāja Parīkṣit, the grandson of Pāṇḍavas, was from his very childhood a great devotee of the Lord. Even while playing with dolls, he used to worship Lord Kṛṣṇa by imitating the worship of the family deity. Purport by his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that even a person who has failed in the proper discharge of yoga practice is given a chance to take birth in the house of devout Brahmanas or in the house of rich men like Kshatriya king or rich merchants. But Mahārāja Parīkṣit was more than that, because he had been a great devotee of the Lord since his previous birth. And as such he took his birth in an imperial family of the Kurus, especially that of the Pāṇḍavas. So from the very beginning of his childhood, he had the chance to know intimately the devotional service of Lord Kṛṣṇa in his own family. The Pāṇḍavas, all being devotees of the Lord, certainly venerated family deities in the royal palace of worship. Children who appear in such families, fortunately, generally imitate such worship of the deities, even in the way of childhood play. By the grace of Lord Sri Kṛṣṇa, we had the chance to become born into a Vaishnava family, and in our childhood, we imitated the worship of Lord Kṛṣṇa by imitating our father. Our father encouraged us in all respects to observe all functions such as the Rath-yatra and Dodi-yatra ceremonies. And he used to spend money liberally for distributing prasad to our children and our friends. Our spiritual master, who also took his birth in a Vaishnava family, got all inspiration from his great Vaishnava father, Thakur Bhaktivinoda. That is the way of all lucky Vaishnava families. They celebrated Mirabai, the restored devotee of Lord Kṛṣṇa, as a great lifter of Govardhan health. The life history of many such devotees is almost the same, because there is always symmetry between the early lives of all great devotees of the Lord. According to Jīva Gosvāmī, Mahārāja Parīkṣit must have heard about the childhood pastimes of Lord Kṛṣṇa in Vṛndāvana, who used to imitate the pastimes of the young playmates. According to Śrīdhara Svāmī, Mahārāja Parīkṣit used to imitate the worship of the family deity by elderly members. Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī have also confirmed the viewpoint of Jīva Gosvāmī. So, accepting either of them, Mahārāja Parīkṣit was naturally inclined to Lord Kṛṣṇa from his very childhood. He might have imitated either of the above-mentioned activities, and all of them established a great devotion from his very childhood, a symptom of a mahā-bhāgavata. Such mahā-bhāgavatas are called nitya-siddhas, or souls liberated from birth. But there are others who may not be liberated from birth, but they develop a tendency for devotional service by association, and they are called sādhana-siddhas. There is no difference between the two in the ultimate issue, and so the conclusion is that everyone can become a sādhana-siddha, a devotee of the Lord, simply by association with the pure devotee. A concrete example is our great spiritual master Śrī Nārada Muni. In his famous life, he was simply a boy of a maid servant, but through association with great devotees, he became a devotee of the Lord by his own standards, unique in the history of devotional service. Om Jnana-Timirandhātya Jnana-Shalakya Chakshur-Miritanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Sakitamina Bhutare Swayam Rupa-Gadāmayam Prasāti Svapadantika. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakam Nad Shri Gurun Vaishnava-nashta Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Rasuna Sanvitam Tam Sajevam Sadve Tabi Vishakha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivachadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Savai Bhagavato Rājā, Pāṇḍaveyo mahā-rathaḥ, bāla-krīḍanakaiḥ krīḍan, kṛṣṇa-kṛīḍāṁ ādade. So, this verse is being spoken by Sanaka Rishi, and the great sage Sanaka Rishi. Who was Sanaka Rishi? Sanaka Rishi was the leader of the sages who were assembled in Naimisharanya. Naimisharanya is located in northern India, a one-night journey from Delhi. And Naimisharanya was a place which was known for spiritual discussions. Great sages used to assemble there, and they used to have spiritual discussions. And 60,000 great sages were assembled for this discussion. 60,000, just imagine. 60,000 great sages were all assembled together, and all 60,000 sages had only one concern. And what was their concern? Who knows? Yes. Yes, how the people of the age of Kali could be saved. So all 60,000 sages were engaged in performing a very elaborate sacrifice, and they had selected Śrīdhara Svāmī as their chairman or as their leader. And Śrīdhara Gosvāmī was considered to be most learned and disciplined on the spiritual path. So in this verse, Sanaka Rishi is saying, he's talking about Mahārāja Parīkṣit, the grandson of Arjuna, who from his very childhood was a great devotee. So Mahārāja Parīkṣit indeed was very, very fortunate king. He had the opportunity of personally seeing the Lord when he was in the womb of his mother. When he was in the womb of his mother Uttara, Ashwatthama had released a brahmastra. Ashwatthama was hoping to kill the child in the womb of Uttara. And Uttara, when she saw that child, that brahmastra, coming towards her, she prayed to the Lord. She said, I may die, but please save the son, or please save the child in my womb. So Krishna is located in everyone's heart as the Paramatma. So Krishna, in a fraction of a moment, firstly entered into the womb of Uttara. And he stopped the Brahmastra from burning Parīkṣit Maharaj. Parīkṣit Maharaj, when he was in the womb of his mother, he felt the heat of the Brahmastra. The Brahmastra is a very powerful weapon. So he felt the heat. Because Krishna personally entered the womb, he saved Parīkṣit from being burned by the heat. So Parīkṣit Maharaj, when he was in the womb of his mother, he had the opportunity to see the personal form of the Lord. Because as Krishna appeared as a Paramatma feature in the womb, Parīkṣit saw the Lord. But then the Lord disappeared from there in a fraction of a second after doing his job. So Parīkṣit, after he came out of his mother's womb, he was always searching for that personality that would resemble what he saw in his mother's womb. Therefore, the meaning of the word Parīkṣit is examiner. Parīkṣit means examiner. So King Parīkṣit was always examining everyone that he met. He would try and see, does this person look like what I saw in my mother's womb? And of course, nobody looks like God. So Parīkṣit, the word Parīkṣit means examiner. So Parīkṣit was constantly examining, and he was always searching for that personality that he saw in his mother's womb. So Parīkṣit, from his young age, he was praying, he was imitating the pastimes of the Lord, and he was worshipping the Lord when he was a young child. So Prabhupada in the Purport has made many very important points. In the Purport, in the Purport, Purport is pointing out that if one is very fortunate, he receives spiritual training from a young age. Like Prabhupada gives example of he himself was born in a Vaishnava family and trained by his father. He gives the example of Bhakti Siddhantaji. Bhakti Siddhantaji was also born in a great Vaishnava family. So, if one is fortunate, then he receives spiritual education from a young age. It doesn't matter whether one is born in a Vaishnava family or whether one is born in a family that becomes a Vaishnava. That is immaterial. Because even the family that becomes a Vaishnava has the opportunity for progressing on the journey back to Godhead. Just like Prabhupada referred, talks about sādhana-siddhas and nitya-siddhas. Two classes of devotees. Nitya-siddhas and sādhana-siddhas. Nitya-siddha means those who are eternally liberated. Like Parīkṣit. And sādhana-siddha is one who becomes liberated by following the process of sadhana bhakti, which has been described by Jīva Gosvāmī in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So even though one may be born in a contaminated position, one may be born in a polluted family, but if one cultivates the process of devotional service through the medium of sadhana-siddha, then he has as much as an opportunity as somebody else to go back to Godhead. Therefore, this process of sādhana-siddha is highly recommended. That is, in order to make spiritual advancement, one must follow the process of sadhana bhakti. So Prabhupada used to say that till the age of 5, you can give the children what you want. But after the age of 5, the child must be disciplined. And if a child is disciplined and educated in spiritual philosophy, given spiritual laws, given explained different processes of pastimes, given deities of the Lord, just like Prabhupada often used to tell us that his father gave him deities. When Prabhupada would even have the rājā festival in his courtyard. In Prabhupada's house in Calcutta, there was a small courtyard, and Prabhupada would regularly have the rājā festival over there and then distribute prasad to his friends. And his father was very liberal in that. And so was also Bhakti-Vinod in training of his children. So it is important that spiritual education be received from a young age. Therefore, the great Maharaja, Maharaja says, Homara Achra Pragya Dharma Bhagavatamya Dhanava Manasam Janma Dhatapi Adgavam Arthadam. That Homara is described to be the age when he was attained 5 years. So, from the age of 5, one must start receiving spiritual education. Why? Because human life is very rare. Hence, it should be utilized correctly for what? For self-realization. Govindadas, a very great Vaishnava poet, Govindadas in Pāṇḍaveyo Mana prayer, he says, this human life is Kamla Jala Jala Jīvana Salamala. Jīvana Salamala. He says this human life is like a drop of water on a leaf. You may have seen in the morning when you get up in the leaf, there's a drop of water. Now if the drop of water thinks that my existence on this leaf is permanent, then it is an illusion. The drop of water knows at any time the wind may push the leaf and the water will fall out of the leaf, isn't it? So, Govindadas says, Jīvana Salamana, this life, Jīvan, is like a drop of water on a leaf. And hence, this life can end at any time. Therefore, Maharaja very strongly emphasized the importance of spiritual education from a young age. And if one is educated from a young age on the spiritual philosophy, then there's a good chance that when you grow up, you'll be fixed on the spiritual path, just like Parīkṣit Maharaj. Parīkṣit Maharaj, the grandson of Arjuna, he was trained from a young age. And then even when he grew up, Kṛṣṇa was like a lion. Kṛṣṇa was not ordinary. The Bhagavatam describes he was like a lion. When he saw the personality of Kali trying to exert its influence, he was ready to kill Kali. But then when Kali apologized and said, please give me a place where I can live, he drove Kali out of his kingdom. So Kṛṣṇa was like a lion. So Prabhupada explains, a devotee similarly should be a lion. But a devotee should be a lion in terms of the determination to drive away the anarthas that are responsible for keeping the living entity entangled in material existence. Therefore, once when a devotee asked Prabhupada, how does one preach and how does one behave? Prabhupada said, the devotee is a lamb at home and a lion outside. That means, when it comes to preaching Krishna consciousness, we should be like a lion, soulful, very straightforward in presenting the philosophy without any hesitancy, because the devotee has a conviction that it is only this philosophy that can save humanity. But when it comes to dealing with life's one is very gentle, therefore one is like a lamb. So Parīkṣit was like a lion. Now, the same Parīkṣit who was saved when he was in the womb of his mother, was later on cursed to die by a Brahmin boy called, what was his name? Śrīngī. This boy Śrīngī cursed him to die. So sometimes people say that this was his reaction, karmic reaction. But Jīva Gosvāmī and Viśvanātha Cakravartī, two very great scholars in Vedic literature, they have discussed this point very thoroughly. And Jīva Gosvāmī and Viśvanātha Cakravartī have concluded that Parīkṣit Maharaj's being cursed by the Brahmin boy was not due to some karmic reaction, but it was ordained by the will of the Lord so that a situation could be created by which the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam could be spoken. So the point is that a devotee of the Lord also has to go through difficulty. It is not that a devotee of the Lord does not have to go through difficulty. But a devotee of the Lord not only goes through difficulties, he has a firm faith that my Lord will always protect me, and whatever is being done is being done for my benefit. Therefore, the devotee always ends up getting protected by the Lord. Just like Śrīngī, this young Brahmin boy, he misused his Brahminical position. How did he misuse it? By cursing Parīkṣit Maharaj, isn't it? In fact, even his father, when his father discovered what his son has done, he said, hey, what have you done? You have cursed this great sage, Parīkṣit Maharaj. Because Parīkṣit Maharaj was truly a Raj Rishi. Raj Rishi means one is also an administrator, a ruler, and a great sage. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has said, Imam Parampara Praptam Imam Rājaso Vidu. Then Supreme Science is coming down to the great kings who are also great sages. So, Parīkṣit Maharaj was not just an ordinary king or administrator. He was also a great sage. And the Brahmin was son, Śrīngī. He misused his position as a Brahmana by cursing this innocent devotee, King Parīkṣit, to die. However, when Parīkṣit Maharaj was cursed to die, he took this as a blessing of the Lord. He took this as a blessing of the Lord because he took this as an opportunity to disentangle himself from material existence. So, a devotee, even if he has to face difficult situations, he understands that eventually there is a certain plan of the Lord. And if the devotee is sincere, then the Lord takes away his material impediments so that he may be fixed on the journey back to Godhead. Because the Lord, as we find Mahatma residing in everyone's heart, is fully aware of what are the desires of the devotee. Just like Arjuna. Arjuna, the eternal companion of the Lord, was also put in a position of delusion. so that a theme could be created by which the Bhagavad Gita could be spoken. So the point to note is this, that a devotee who is surrendered to the Lord has no fear. So the sages in Namaśrāvanya, they are asking Śrīdhara Svāmī questions about Parīkṣit Maharaj. You see this trend in the entire Śrīmad Bhagavatam. You see the trend that the devotees are anxious to inquire not only about the Lord, but also about his devotees. The great sages in numerous places, even in the first canto, they want to know, please aspire towards the glories of Parīkṣit Maharaj. Again in the second canto, again and again, this point comes. Because the devotees of the Lord are very, very dear to the Lord. This was confirmed by the Lord through the Rasa Muni. The Rasa Muni was trying to harm Amrish Maharaj, but Amrish Maharaj was totally fixed in his meditation on the Lord. So finally the Rasa Muni reached the Lord, because the Lord told him that my devotees are so dear to me, that they sacrifice life, children, possessions for my pleasure. Therefore, I reside in their heart and the devotee resides in my heart. So one who becomes a devotee, one who accepts the teachings of Krishna, well, he is very, very dear to the Lord. He resides in the heart of the Lord and the Lord resides in his heart. So the Lord protected Parīkṣit Maharaj. The Lord was present in Uttara womb and the Paramatma. He protected Parīkṣit Maharaj from Masata and Brahmastra. And anyone who is surrendered to the Lord is protected by the Lord. And even if the devotee has encountered difficulties, he understands this is the causeless mercy of the Lord, and hence he accepts it willingly. So, by devotee association, the Prabhupada is very clearly making this point. The whole paragraph is devoted to this one point. How by sādhana-siddha one can become qualified. And he gives the example of Nārada Muni. Nārada Muni, in his previous life, was the son of a maidservant. But the only fortune of his maidservant was, she was not an ordinary maidservant. She was a maidservant in the house of the great sages. So because she was a maidservant in the house of the great sages, now the Muni will have the opportunity to hear the philosophy that the great sages would speak and to eat the remnants of foodstuffs that they would leave behind. And as a result of hearing the philosophy that the great sages were speaking, now the Muni became so convinced about the cost of devotional service that one day his mother was going to milk a cow and she was bitten by a snake and she died. But now the Muni did not get disturbed at all. Why? Because he had understood by associating with the great sages that everything in the show world is temporary. And one who takes birth has to give up this body also. Therefore, the devotee understands that all relationships are temporary, all situations are temporary, and everything has a beginning and an end. For one who is taken birth, that is also certain. Therefore, he proceeds, he progresses in executing his duty, that is executing the process of devotional service, because he understands that everything is temporary and this is the only permanent asset. So, sādhana-siddha, so we are all in the position where we can become perfect by following the process of sadhana bhakti. We may not have a fortune of being like Parīkṣit Maharaj, or being like Prabhupada, or Thakur Bhakti or Bhakti Nandadi, but this process is so powerful. As Prabhupada is explaining in the purport, this medicine is so powerful that if we take advantage of this medicine even today in Kali Yuga, it will have the same effect as it had thousands of years ago on Parīkṣit Maharaj. Parīkṣit Maharaj, when he was close to die, Śrīdhara Gosvāmī recommended that he should prepare for his death by hearing the transcendental glories of Sri Krishna. So, hearing the transcendental glory of Sri Krishna, either to the process of chanting, or to the process of reading from the scriptures, or through the process of Shravanam Kirtanam, will have the same effect today in 20th century Kali Yuga that it had thousands of years ago. Therefore, this medicine is intact, its potency is intact. With the passage of time, civilization has become degraded. With the passage of time, the atmosphere in which we live has become polluted. But fortunately, with the passage of time, the potency of the Hare Krishna mantra has not gone down. With the passage of time, the potency of Krishna Katha is as strong today as it was thousands and thousands of years ago. Why? Because these transcendental parcels of the Lord are all descending from the spiritual world. And because they're all descending from the spiritual world, time does not affect it. Time affects everything material, but time doesn't affect anything spiritual. Just like the spirit soul doesn't get affected by time, but the material body gets affected by time. So, what is transcendental doesn't get affected by material environment or pollution, etc. So, if we take advantage of this process, then it will have the same effect. So, Krishna is anxious that we serve, and as an advancement of the devotional path, there is a very unique relationship between the devotee and the Lord. The Lord is anxious to serve the devotee, and the devotee is anxious to serve the Lord. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a very nice story of Mahārāja Parīkṣit, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was indeed very, very fond of, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would often describe it to his devotee. In this story, we can see how the Lord is always anxious to serve his devotees. Mahārāja Parīkṣit has just completed the parikrama of the Govardhan Hill, and he was fasting. So after having completed his parikrama, Mahārāja Parīkṣit was just relaxing. He had his eyes partially closed. And a very beautiful, I saw a painting this morning somewhere in the temple, or in the temple. And so, while he was relaxing, a very beautiful young boy came to him with a pot of milk and said, I understand that you are hungry, so please have this milk. Mahārāja Parīkṣit was surprised. How did this young cowboy boy know that he was hungry? So he said, the villagers had come to take water from the well, and the ladies saw you, that you looked tired. And in my village, nobody was hungry. So please drink this milk, and I will come back and take this pot back from you. The Mahārāja Parīkṣit was stuck in wonder. Who was an attractive personality who came to him with this milk? The same night, after Mahārāja Parīkṣit had the milk, he had a dream. And in that dream, the same boy appeared again. And the boy appeared again and told Mahārāja Parīkṣit that he was firstly feeling the heat as he had been buried in a cave below the bushes, because at that time a lot of the Hindu temples were destroyed by the Mahantans who had invaded North India. So what the priests had done, in order to protect the deities from being attacked or destroyed, many of the deities were moved to bring out of Vṛndāvana to Jaipur and other cities, and it made that boy who came and gave the milk was Krishna. He was so embarrassed. He said, I didn't even recognize that boy. He came and gave me the milk. It was Krishna himself. Anyway, the next morning, Mahārāja Parīkṣit took all the villagers with him, and they all went to and found the deity. And a very nice temple was made, and Mahārāja Parīkṣit, I'm just summarizing a long story. So Mahārāja Parīkṣit installed the deity and established very nice deity worship. Then Mahārāja Parīkṣit was ordered in his dream again by the Lord, and the Lord said, even though you have installed me on a very nice platform, still I'm feeling great heat. So please go and bring for me sandalwood and apply the sandalwood all over my body, and then I will feel more comfortable. So Mahārāja Parīkṣit got a second instruction from the Lord in the dream, and he left for Orissa in eastern India. And while he was going to eastern India, when he was in eastern India, Orissa, he visited the temple of Ramana. Some of you may have visited the temple. And because the temple over there at that time had very often deity worship. And Mahārāja Parīkṣit had installed very elaborate deity worship of his deity in Govardhana. And he wanted to study how sweet rice and other nice preparations were being offered to the Lord in Ramana. So, Mahārāja Parīkṣit, after visiting the temple there, he went to the market. And the same night, the pujari over there had a dream. And in the dream, the Lord told him that I have stolen a cup of sweet rice, which I have hidden behind the curtain. So you please get up, find that sweet rice, and then go to the marketplace and search for the Mahārāja Parīkṣit and give him this sweet rice. So the pujari got up. He went and saw, yes, the sweet rice was exactly where the Lord had described to him in a dream. So the Lord stole a cup of sweet rice for his beloved devotee, Mahārāja Parīkṣit. And then the priest went to the market and he started shouting, who is Mahārāja Parīkṣit? Who is Mahārāja Parīkṣit? So Mahārāja Parīkṣit finally identified himself and then he gave him the sweet rice. And when Mahārāja Parīkṣit got the sweet rice, he felt such great ecstasy, and he just jumped up in ecstasy. And the priest could understand that Mahārāja Parīkṣit was not an ordinary devotee, and the Lord personally stole the sweet rice for his pleasure. So gradually, everyone in the town found out that Mahārāja Parīkṣit was such an exalted devotee that the Lord personally stole the sweet rice for him. So whenever Mahārāja Parīkṣit would go, there would be huge crowds of people. Just like these days when civilization is degraded, if a big sports star or a rock star comes in front of his temple or in Catherine Street, everyone's going to surround him for autographs and so on. So at that time civilization was more a saint. So great devotees of the Lord were worshipped. So Mahārāja Parīkṣit, wherever he went, people would just surround him. So ultimately Mahārāja Parīkṣit wanted to run away from this. He didn't want people to worship him like that, to surround him. He didn't want to be known as a great devotee. Because the characteristic of a devotee of the Lord is that he does not even think that he has a drop of love of God. These every seen, both incarnations claim that they have intensive amount of love of God. But if you read the writings of Krishna Kaviraj, if you read the four writings of Narasimha Thakur, Govinda Das, etc., you will see that in all their prayers they are claiming they don't even have a drop of love of God. Prabhupada had done so much, but with Prabhupada was being the planet, he told us, I've done nothing at all. I only know successors, he said, I tried to follow my spiritual master, but I have done nothing at all. So a devotee of the Lord never thinks that he's done a lot. So Mahārāja Parīkṣit, he did not want all this. He worshipped when people would mob him. So he ran away to Jagannath Puri. But when he ran away to Jagannath Puri, again people found out that the Lord had certainly stolen sweet rice for his pleasure. And wherever he would go, again people would surround him, even in Jagannath Puri. So after worshipping and having darshan of Lord Jagannath, with the help of the administrators of the Jagannath Puri temple, Mahārāja Parīkṣit he had made all the arrangements to take the sandalwood back to Govardhana. But the Lord had already tested his beloved devotee. So the Lord did not wanted to give him the trouble of carrying a huge amount of sandalwood, 2,000 kilometers yearly distance, because of the way at that time the Mohammedan kings were ruling. and they were very unfavorable to anything to do with temple worship. So on the way back, Mahārāja again stopped in the temple in Vṛndāvana, and he had a dream again. And in that dream, the Lord told him, Mahārāja, now I'm feeling cold. Previously I was feeling very warm. Now there's no need for you to carry. Somebody has come and given me sandalwood. So I have enough sandalwood here. You please apply the sandalwood there for the deity of Gopinath. So the Mahārāja then did not have to steal he did not have to take the sandalwood back. And next morning he announced it to the pujari, and everyone was very happy. In the temple of Vṛndāvana, the deity all the sandalwood was applied on the deity, because the deity of Kṛṣṇa is non-different. So there was the deity in Vṛndāvana or the deity in Govardhan, it was the same deity. So we gave this story briefly to explain how the devotee to the Lord is also anxious to serve his devotee. But the devotee anxious to carry out any orders of the Lord. So the key to this process of devotional service is indeed the most fortunate activity that one can possibly engage in. So by following this process of sādhana-siddhas, one can become perfect on this path of devotional service. So we may not have had a fortune of taking birth, like King Parīkṣit has taken birth, but if we take advantage of the spiritual knowledge we've received and we decide to become serious on the spiritual path, then one will be able to develop love of God. So to summarize this verse talks about the glories of Mahārāja Parīkṣit, the grandson of Pāṇḍavas, who had a great fortune of being trained in spiritual life from a very young age. And Parīkṣit the examiner was always absorbed in thinking of Kṛṣṇa. Why? Because wherever he saw, he was always seeing, as he looked like the person I saw in my mother's womb. And that was Kṛṣṇa. So he was fully absorbed in thinking of Kṛṣṇa. So we as aspiring devotees, if we take advantage of this process of sādhana-siddha, if we follow the process of sadhana-bhakti. What is sadhana-bhakti? Sadhana-bhakti means rules and regulations. Many times people argue, why do you need rules and regulations for developing love of God? So Prabhupada used to say that you need rules and regulations even for walking on the street. Even if you want to walk on the street naked, you can't, because there are certain rules that one must observe in walking on the street. So how can you expect that for developing love of God, there are no rules and regulations? So sadhana-siddha, by following these rules and regulations, sadhana-bhakti, rules and regulations, and chanting the holy names, studying the scriptures, we will be able to develop love of God, and therefore make spiritual advance. Right. I also wanted to explain to you all briefly the Śrī Krishna Prabhu, that song that we had sung before the class, okay? It has a very powerful message, so I'll give a summary explanation. So this is a song that was composed by Narottam Thakur. Narottam Thakur has composed many songs in simple Bengali, and these songs have the same weight as the conclusion of the Vedic scriptures. They will Prabhupada used to sing the song. This song, Śrī Krishna Prabhu for the more especially, very valuable to devotees, because it explains to the devotees how one by begging for the mercy makes spiritual advances. So Narottam Thakur is saying, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Śrī Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu, please be merciful upon me. Except for you, there is no one who is more merciful in this entire planet. Pati pavan hetu tava mosana patita prabhu na bhaivayala. You are the most merciful incarnation ever to appear. So we should always remind ourselves how fortunate we are to have got linked up with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. The Krishna conscious movement is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as also stated by Jīva Gosvāmī, Namo Mahā-bhāgavata Krishna Srimad. You are the most merciful of all the incarnations you appear. You have presented such a simple process of self-realization. And we can see how in different parts of the world, people with such degraded backgrounds, but in each of this chanting process, and at once their spiritual spark begins to get more and more illuminated. So this process is so sublime, and so sweet, and so simple. So Narottam Thakur says, you have appeared especially to save the fallen souls of this age. And nobody on the planet is more fallen than I am. So in the show world, everyone is competing to be number one. Everyone wants to be known as number one. But in spiritual life, everybody wants to be known as number last. Everyone wants to be known as the most fallen. But just because one devotee claims he's most fallen, doesn't mean we take advantage of it. Like Lord Kṛṣṇa is saying, I'm the most fallen. Devotees know that he's advanced. But out of humility, he says, I am the most fallen. So therefore, my claim for your mercy is first. I need your mercy first. Why? Because I am the most fallen of all the devotees. Nitya-siddhas Premananda Sukhi Kripa Karo Bala Kore Ami Boro Dukhi. I am very, very unhappy. But you, Lord Nityananda, you look to be in complete ecstasy. Prabhu Nityananda Premananda Sukhi. Sukhi means happy, peaceful. Why are you peaceful? Premananda. Because your heart is absorbed with love of God. Because your heart is absorbed with Premananda, love of God. Therefore you are peaceful. You are happy. But I am very unhappy. So Lord Nityananda, please be merciful upon me. Because if I get your mercy, then I can make spiritual advancement. And he says, Daya karo Sita Pati Advaita Gosai, Dava Kripa bāla-krīḍanakaiḥ Jīva. The husband of Sita was Advaita Acharya. And it was Advaita Acharya who specially caused Lord Chaitanya to descend. Because Advaita Acharya, when he was on the planet, he saw that civilization had become so degraded that he was not capable of saving them. So he told the Lord, you firstly have to incarnate. Only then these people will be saved. And then Lord Chaitanya invented. So, Narottam Thakur is praying for Lord, for Advaita Acharya's mercy. And he says, Dava Kripa bāla-krīḍanakaiḥ Jīva. I will not get the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda unless I have your mercy. And Aham Sanatana Rupa Raghunath Bhattayaka Ki Jiva Prabhu Lokanath. He further prays to the sixth Goswāmī of Vṛndāvana. The sixth Goswāmī of Vṛndāvana had renounced everything to execute the process of devotional service. And he prays to Govindādas and Swarup Damodar. Govindādas and Swarup Damodar were the two personal secretaries of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who were always with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Narottam Das is praying the sixth Goswāmī of Vṛndāvana and Govindādas and Swarup Damodar, all of you please be merciful upon me, and also Lokanath. Then I'll give you mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda and Advaita Acharya. And then he says, Daya karo Shri Acharya Prabhu Śrīnivāsa Rāma Chandra Sangamagin Narottam. Then he ultimately prays to whom? To Śrī Nārada Acharya. And he prays, please may I have the association of Ramachandra. Who was Ramachandra? A great devotee of the Lord. So Narottam Das prays, please may I have the association of Ramachandra so that I will be dissolved in love of God. So Narottam Das is revealing the mentality, the attitude, how so he prays for mercy and thereby make spiritual advance. Hare Krishna. So I'll take on questions. I give a real summary explanation of this. Usually I get long lecture on that. Yes? Well, this question can be better answered. I'll quote to you what the fourth canto of Bhagavatam says. Just like you have devotees, mature people who get been in Krishna consciousness for years and years, and then they get distracted, isn't it? So this question is a little similar to children being trained up in Purport. So obviously, there's nothing wrong in the process. The process is perfect, the medicine is perfect, and the doctor is perfect, Krishna. He's the supreme doctor who's given us medicine. But the patient, sometimes he may take the medicine. The Bhagavatam says, sometimes a patient takes the medicine and prematurely stops to take the medicine thinking that he is recovered. And then he gets a relapse. So, if some children have gone through the Gurukul system, and if they are attracted by illusory energy at the moment, it means that at some time they stop taking the medicine. And because at some time they stop taking the medicine and following the other guidelines of the doctor, they got a relapse. We must understand we're all living in Maya's kingdom. This is a Kunta Jagat. Kunta Jagat means Maya's kingdom is nothing but misery. So, if we're not alert on this place, on this platform, we get captured at any time. Therefore, many times, the devotees would ask Prabhupada, when Prabhupada would read the deities, he would always say something. So sometimes devotees would ask Prabhupada, what were you saying? And Prabhupada would say, I was praying to Krishna, but I'm not following Maya. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Haridas Thakur, and Haridas, now we are old, we are not well, don't chant, just take rest. He said, no! The moment I don't chant, I'll get captured by Maya. So, the defect is not in the medicine, the defect is in the patient. And any patient who doesn't take the medicine properly can get infected. More questions? No questions? No.
So you indicate the patient to give parents
It has an influence on the children.
The spiritual education is one thing, but also you need some kind of psychological equilibrium. And the parents are not that mature to use them, even if these things are fictional.
Yeah, my point was there's some defect somewhere. Either the parents are not chanting or the children are not chanting. And it spills over. Yeah. We are living in a very tribal society. Yes, Arvind. Question is why is it just to be a language of devotees? Because we have a very strong false ego. And that false ego has been with us since times immemorial. And it's not that your false ego has just developed in the last few years, and because of this false ego, the living entity always likes to think that I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. So it takes great humility to consider oneself to be fool number one. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was questioned by the scholars in Benares, why are you doing Vedanta? What are you doing? Chanting like a madman. Just like when you go chanting on the Catherine Street, I'm sure some people come and say, you're crazy, what are you doing? That's crazy activity. So even many Indians come to that, even in India. When we go on Harinam, they say, what is this? It's crazy. So these people are always also saying this to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he said, my spiritual master thought I was fool. He said, this time like Krishna. So the thing is, one should really consider oneself to be a fool. But externally, we may say I'm fool. But internally we all like to think, I'm the smartest guy around. So we have to keep storming our brain with attentive chanting and philosophy. If we chant attentively, understand the philosophy, recognizing our fool number one, then there's hope for spiritual advancement. Otherwise it says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bahu Janma Kare Yadi Sādhana-siddhas Sadhutana Paya Krishna Pade Premana. The real development of God will not be there. So we have to keep trying. In Kali Yuga, our conditioning is so intense. We have to keep trying. Just like the Mature there's that Avis company, helps rent a car, they have a slogan, we try harder. Isn't it? They advertise, we try harder. So, is it Hertz or Avis? One of those companies. So, we have to have that slogan, we try harder. We keep trying every day. You can't try for one day and fail and then give up, Krishna consciousness is too difficult for me. You have to keep. Prabhupada said every morning when you get up, take your shoes and beat your mind 100 times. And every night you go to sleep. Bhakti-Siddhanta said that. He said every morning when you get up, beat your brains 100 times in the night also. So if you want to do it, you can do it, but do it with rubber shoes. More than that. Hard shoes, you end up in the hospital. Yes, any other questions from anybody else? Yes. Psychoanalysis. Don't waste time trying to figure your own mind, because your own mind is contaminated, polluted, filthy, dirty, unreliable, deceitful. So what's the idea of doing? Like to analyze your... We also may already analyze your mind for yourself. The mind has been described as turbulent, obstinate, turbulent, deceitful. The mind is always deceiving you. One moment it tells you it's a good relationship, the other moment it tells you, no, it's a filthy relationship. One moment you like someone, next moment you hate someone, isn't it? Therefore, the polluted mind has to take shelter of the purified mind. Yes? Otherwise you'll always be confused. These psychiatrists who do all these psychoanalysis, they're not cases themselves. Most of these psychiatrists need to be disciplined themselves. And we are living in a society where terminology and flashy words are attractive. So they have a lot of these flashy titles and words, and people don't know anything, so they go to all these psychiatrists. So no more questions? This was such a philosophical workshop, there were so many questions.
Is it because the Hare Krishna movement just started after 25 years that people haven't really understood yet?
Those who take the trouble to talk to us, they appreciate it. But those who don't, what can you do? Like in the Soviet Union, our movement is now very, very respected. There was an article in the leading Soviet paper, Pāṇḍavas, last week. And one of the biggest republic in Soviet Union, the Russian Republic. So they have a symbol, like a national flag, which was previously very Christian, before communism. So now they want to have a new symbol, because they said now in our country we have Hare Krishna, we have this, we have that, we can't have a Christian emblem. And it mentioned Hare Krishna. So you can imagine. So it all depends. Unfortunately in Canada there's some special karma which I can't figure out. But it's not that every part of the world has the same karma. I think once you get out to Canada and outside America, you see a different spiritual world. And for some reason, my tiny brain can't figure it out, but if you go beyond North America, you see Krishna consciousness virtually booming in many parts of the world, like in I was telling a lot, like in the Soviet Union, it's moving at an unprecedented rate. Never in the history, I think, has any spiritual movement gone anywhere in the world so fast. We're selling 5,000 big books a day. Books on television, radio, print, every day, everywhere. People are just taking to it. So you can lecture in universities, people pay to come to your lectures. They pay 2 rubles to come to a lecture. It's not that free. They pay 40 rubles to buy a book. So, even in Poland, and most parts of Europe, Krishna consciousness is going very nicely also. Really well. So, we have to keep trying harder. Just like the Karmis was told that we try harder. So we have to keep trying, we can't give up. Because Lord Chaitanya, desire is, Prithivite Ashita Nagara Dekam, Sarvata Prachara, Vṛndāvana. The Lord Chaitanya wants Krishna consciousness to be carried to every village of Canada. I don't know how many villages there are in Canada, for instance. Some villages, towns. So we have to carry the Krishna consciousness to every town and village. And just because the success of the little villages doesn't mean we give up our Lord Chaitanya's order. We keep telling us Krishna will help. So, there are no more questions? No philosophical questions? This is such a philosophical word. Yes.
Hare Krishna.